Welcome to the Gottesdienst Crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church, to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Welcome back to the Gottesdienst Crowd. This is Jason Broughton. Today we have back with us Dave Petersen. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you.
And also Jarryd Allison. He is a former MARSOC and currently a software engineer. Welcome back, Jarryd.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Jarryd, the last time I had you on, we were talking about sort of kind of the analogy of special forces training and the evaluations that special forces are put through, in particular MARSOC, which you went through. And what can we glean from those elite training and apply to the office of the ministry, at least the training of pastors, such that our attrition rate doesn't look so atrocious. We don't have much of an attrition rate, right? And, how do we evaluate and how do we go about this training, and what kind of skills can we begin to incorporate that might make these men who are coming out of seminary better prepared to face the battles that they're going to face, not only externally, but also internally. And Dave listened to it and, of course, overreacted like he does and wanted to have a conversation about how you're wrong. No, that's not what it was. Dave, what was your initial reaction?
I thought that the idea to compare the office of the ministry to MARSOC was a bit of an exaggeration. I sort of would be just very happy if we were just regular Marines. So
okay. Yeah. So we decided to put this conversation together to discuss that further. And so kind of where I want to begin is in my conversations with Petersen afterward, and just even before we began, he thought it might be really helpful to get just a brief history of what you did in MARSOC and what your training was like. What are the things that you went through? So, Jarryd, could you take us through that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So it starts at first. MARSOC is a little bit unique in that there's no direct path to it. You can't be a civilian and instantly become a MARSOC Marine. There's a requirement of service prior to that. So really it starts with going to officer candidate school, passing that. Then you go to the basic school, which is a 6-month course. You pass that, you get a military occupation specialty, what you're going to do. Mine happened to be infantry officer. So I was a intelligence officer. We go through infantry officer first, and then we go to intel school. And the infantry officers course, IOC, is really the pinnacle of training. It's where you get to shoot guns, you live out in the woods, you learn how to fight warfare. It was probably the most enjoyable time that I had, even though it's absolutely miserable. There's multiple iterations where you're out in the field, you're not getting much sleep, it's raining, you're in the Shenandoah Valley, which is steeped in history, and you're having as miserable a time, I think, as maybe Washington's forces were during the Revolutionary War. And you're eating dirt the entire time, just being told you're not good enough, you're constantly under evaluation, but you're having a great time learning how to do these things that are important. Went into the Marine Corps, got my MOS, and then decided I would try for MARSOC after I spent a year in Afghanistan, and then subsequently went to assessment and selection. And there, it was 7 weeks at the time I went to it. I don't know if it's changed. I could probably call some friends that are still in and ask them, but I think it's about the same. And they treat that as a 4-week preparation where guys are dropping out all the time. You're swimming, you're working out multiple times a day, you're taking classes, and you're being evaluated. And if you make it through that 4 weeks, then you go off for 3 weeks at an undisclosed location where you have a period of time alone, where you're doing long distance navigation all day long. You're getting tested on various things that seem like they won't matter. You're being put through different scenarios to see how you react to these things. And it would be miserable, but as a young man, it's really awesome. You're doing all these things and having this sort of adventure where you're being tested, your mettle is being tested. And there's a value in that, because if you're wise, you're second guessing yourself every time. I mean, if you're doing a 20-mile land navigation and you find the point and you're done, that's pretty cut and dry. But when you're put into a situation where actors are coming in, then you're second guessing yourself and trying to say, am I good enough? Am I making these right decisions? And there's a lot of growth that happens there. And there's also conversations that happen afterwards where you're being asked, how do you think you did? Are you able to grow and do better the next time as you go through this? Because they're trying to find guys that can do the hard physical things. You can do a 12-mile ruck run. You can make these times. You can do these physical things. But what they also need are guys that are introspective enough to be able to recover from failures and then find success later on. So fortunate enough to get selected, and then you go through yet another individual training course. This one, 9, 12, 14 months, something like this. I can't recall the time. It's a long time. And they're building you up to do special operations things. Now, they pull from across the Marine Corps. So I went to infantry officer course. A lot of infantry reconnaissance Marines that get, more of this ground training go through. But you also get logisticians, intel Marines that haven't had that infantry focused background. So the first part of it really is you go through SEER training, search, evade, resist, and escape. That's pretty awesome. You don't eat for a week. They maybe smack you around a little bit, lock you up, interrogate you, things like this, just to be aware of how you react in those situations. Pilots go through the same training. And then you're reinforced with small unit tactics, long patrols, that culminate in what I think was the most difficult thing we go through, which is Raider spirit. Undisclosed amount of time. You're not sleeping for the entire time. It's multiple weeks, but you don't actually know how long the evolution is. And you're going through the woods, planning various missions and raids, collecting intelligence, and doing things. It harkens back to what the original Raiders were doing during World War II. And you come out on the other side of that looking a little spooky. Your wife maybe doesn't quite recognize you because you haven't slept in several weeks. And then you start going into more specific special operations training. The whole time, majority of it is outside. There is some classroom time. It's a lot of working out, camaraderie. You're tested every iteration in your physical fitness and the standards that they adhere to, so that when you come out on the other side, you've gone through the ringer and that you're capable of doing the missions that you are assigned.
So a quick question here. It's kind of a twofold question for me. In terms of these evolutions of training or of evaluation, is it primarily front-loaded with physical and then it becomes more mental? Or is that physical and mental throughout?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it's sprinkled throughout.
Okay.
But that is caveated with the first iterations are harder.
Okay.
And so in terms of physicality.
Yeah.
And I think that there's similar to SEAL Hell Week, right? You make it through Hell Week, and then the graduation percentage goes up because you passed what is considered the hardest thing. That's not to say it's more physical. I think that is kind of a mental break of saying, I made it through this, I can make it through anything.
Right.
And I don't know the training, but that's kind of how Raider Spirit was. The drops decreased greatly. Now guys are dropping because of injury. There are performance related drops, but like you said, it becomes more mental. For example, we go through, I think, a 6 weeks shooting package, and guys are dropping there because they can't perform to the level. It's not as physically demanding, but you're required to be able to perform at a shooting capacity that some guys just can't hit. And that's not a detraction on them. That's just they just can't do that thing. So they fail. Right. But the whole time you are working out, you're doing physical events. I mean, there's dummies that we carry around, practice, life-saving triage in the middle of a classroom, whatever, just kind of spring it on you. Yeah, I would say it gets more balanced after that first round of, hey, we still expect you to perform physically, but now we're asking you to think about how you're performing and do these things.
And so that leads to my second part of this question, which is, I assume those who are evaluating you are the instructors of those various sections, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So what is your interaction with those instructors? What kind of interaction do you have with them along the way?
So that's a good question. And evaluation happens. I'll just say this briefly, and then I'll try to answer your question. So it happens at every single point. So your instructors are giving you classroom instruction, and then you are to go out and train to those instruction standards. So if it's setting up a hasty patrol base, planning an ambush, things like that, they're going to teach you how to do those things, and then they are going to evaluate you in the field to see, okay, are you able to translate classroom work into this semi-real life situation? But your peers are also evaluating you. So as you get to the end of each culmination, your instructors are going to present the information that they've collected from your performance. And then the guys that are in your platoon are also evaluating how you did during that time. And that all goes into each phase. You're getting evaluated, and it's sort of a pass-fail. You get boarded or you don't. And people are making a decision.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's helpful.
Of course.
Do you have more on kind of your training and then what you did?
So, yeah, I can't talk very, very specifically about what I did quite yet. I'm not trying to be cryptic, just trying to stay out of trouble. But and training doesn't necessarily stop there. Officers go through a little bit more just because obviously there's a little bit more riding on us. We are responsible. So they want to make sure that we're aware of these things. And then you hit your team, and then the training cycle starts again because you are preparing for deployment. So
how big are the teams?
Let me think about the exact numbers. I think 12 to 14 are the teams, and then those are organized into companies and then battalions, but obviously at a different size than, let's say, an infantry battalion, right?
Okay.
So my team, about 14 guys. You have 2 elements of 5, and then an ops chief and a team chief, and you might have a couple of attachments for like intel and logistics, things like that.
Okay.
And then you go through your training round. So you're essentially mimicking what you did in the individual training course as you build up to a company collective exercise. So can your company work together to solve these training scenarios? And then you go to a MARSOC evaluation called Raven, where you're going somewhere in the US and doing a large scale sort of role-playing exercise, if you will, but just to see, hey, can you coordinate as a company and achieve these sort of special operations objectives given the scenario that we've given you? And then that certifies you for deployment. And from there you deploy. I went to Southeast Asia, was my deployment. And we were obviously less kinetic there. It's not, at the time, it wasn't full-fledged engagement, but you are working to pursue national interests in that area of the country that you're deploying to.
Okay.
Is that big enough?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And so in terms of the teams, do you have a specialty on the team, but need to be competent in all that the other members do? Or do they just give you another specialist?
Are you talking about me specifically or every individual?
Like every individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there has to be general competency in all the tasks, but you might have a specialty that you're going to be put on point for this.
That's right. And that's down to myself, my team chief, who's been there for a while, who knows the guys probably better than me, of understanding, hey, this guy's really good with languages. We're going to go get him another language. This guy's very good at technology. We're going to have him do communication stuff.
Yeah.
And that guys fall into those roles, and whether they like it or not.
Right.
And then there's also, we also specialize teams by various capabilities. So we had a free fall team. They all went to free fall, which is like skydiving, basically. My team was the dive team. So we all went to dive school, and we had that capability. So if there was a dive mission, we were the guys to go do that.
So hopefully you like water.
Yes, exactly. You better like to swim. Or learn to like it, I suppose.
Yeah. Dave, do you have any questions on that?
Yeah, that was super interesting. Thank you. We should probably say also thanks for your service, sincerely.
Well, thank you for your service as well.
Oh, you're welcome. But glad you didn't get hurt, or at least hurt too bad, and you're able to be with us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, me too. My wife and kids also very thankful, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the training pipeline, and happy to talk more specifics. But that's what really crafted my questions that I posed in the first article, which is, this is not a one-to-one comparison, but having been part of this high-performance organization where the rungs to get through it are so strict and unyielding, what does it look like on our side when the stakes are so much higher? If that makes sense, and hopefully is a good segue.
Yeah. So if the stakes are so much higher, it almost is asking the question, is our training and our evaluation all the more strict? Is that
right?
Fair?
That's exactly right. And when I come out on the other side of special operations training, there's a standard that sets the baseline across all of MARSOC, especially for those initial grads. Now that can change, right? If instead of Southeast Asia, I went to Mosul, Iraq, then how I conduct my business, what I find important in my training workup is going to be different. So maybe I think learning Arabic is less important than going to fire support because that's what they were doing there. Whereas I needed to have guys that spoke the language because it's just a different sort of focus. But when I look out across what is coming out of the seminaries and what's across the LCMS, you see some guys that are very confessional. You see some guys that tolerate things like contemporary services or abandoning the liturgy or trying to move closer towards evangelicalism. And that's pretty rampant. And I think it happens at all ages, but the baseline standard of understanding seems to be much more widespread than the organization that I was part of. And we're talking about eternal souls. And so that's what kind of led to this question. And the easiest way for me to go about it, which I think Pastor Petersen mentioned, which is I have this experience. So that gives me a little bit of credibility in terms of, hey, I have an experience of going through the ringer and coming out the other side as this standardized, hopefully specialized product. Where is that, and how do I see that? Where's the transparency? And I can only look at the data that we had, and I'm looking at it saying, hey, the attrition rates that I was dealing with were really, really high, and I liked that. That was good because it made sure the product was great. And if I just look at the data, the attrition rates, I can't, peel open the can that is the synod and see it, all the nitinoid dirty laundry, which I don't really want to see, right? But if I just look at the top level data and I look at my anecdotal experience at different states, the military was moving me around, and we're constantly trying to find a church that's confessional, and in some areas it was impossible, and that just belies a sort of shotgun blast instead of a very focused target as to what's coming out.
Yeah. So, Dave, this is my question for you. So what are your thoughts about just the analogy in general? And then to what extent did the 2 tracks prior to the walkout kind of follow that? You had like the systems guys and then the non-systems guys. You went to the St. Louis Seminary or the Practical Seminary in Springfield or Fort Wayne. Have we lost something with that? And is there a need that we get back to something like that?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think what we lost was we lost the St. Louis Seminary. Sometimes people will say, we need a practical seminary. We have 2 practical seminaries. We do not have a seminary that is producing theological scholars. When you look at the kind of, it's astounding what the St. Louis produced, really, the kind of scholarship that came out of there. It didn't work out so great for us. So, maybe we have some questions about it, but I don't think we have currently, I don't mean to say that that the faculty aren't scholars, because I think they are. I don't mean to say that nobody, takes full advantage of the education there and does the extra work and prepares himself and goes on for higher education. But both seminaries right now they're producing, it's not, I don't think anybody, and I don't know how to, I'm in a very precarious position here in the shadow of one of our seminaries.
Sure.
So I don't want to throw stones at it, but I think we would all say.
And I don't want to point fingers either, because
exactly.
It's not fair. And there's only so much you can do in 3 years or 4 years. But I guess it seems like the question needs to be asked in terms of, I think it's a fair assessment that Jarryd puts forward in saying this is more important, and does our training reflect that?
Yeah. Are we actually taking it seriously?
Yeah. I think that's a really, I think that's a look in the mirror that the Missouri Synod that we need to do. I
agree. And I don't think anybody could honestly say that they think the seminaries are really rigorous and vigorous in their, they might be in presenting the material. Yeah. What they are not rigorous on is holding the students accountable.
That's right.
Yeah. In evaluation and in the kind of evaluation with the instructors you get, doesn't seem like that's the case.
Right.
And that's where, and I guess maybe it's okay if I point fingers because I'm kind of outside of it. But you're exactly right, is the accountability. To prepare for this, I read On the Priesthood by Chrysostom, which maybe is not the definitive text on anything. But he warns very specifically about if you are ordaining someone that can't do the job, then your punishment is going to be even worse than theirs. So there's a lot of warnings in here. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend everyone read it. It's really, really good just to hear how eloquently he describes the fear, the admiration, and the respect he holds for the office. And you just hope that the seminaries know that if you know somebody shouldn't be a pastor and you're ordaining them anyways, or are you instilling a healthy fear in the seminarians, or a healthy respect, maybe I should say, of, hey, if you're self-reflecting and you ever have cold feet, 4 years is a short amount of time, but it's actually a long enough time to realize, hey, I'm not right for this. And for people in a leadership position to say, hey, you're not right for this. There are other vocations that we think would be great for you, but maybe being a pastor isn't one of them. And I think that's okay. You need to be okay with that.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the interaction with the other guys in your training. Was there, and I think the reason I'm asking this will become clear as I put it forward, but was there a sense of ever envious competition? Was it like healthy competition that helped to raise the bar for each other, and a certain camaraderie that was supportive? And the reason I am asking it is my sense is that for a lot of pastors, and maybe this is beyond the Missouri Synod, maybe this is just clergy in general, I don't know. But I get the sense that there is an envious competition among the members of the clergy. Dave, would you say that's fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me interrupt, though, before he answers that. I'm afraid that some of our listeners might be confused with the word attrition. There's really kind of two aspects of attrition. We have a very low attrition rate at the seminary. That is, almost everybody graduates, right? But then, because of that, probably, we do have actually a pretty high attrition rate of losing pastors in the field.
Exactly.
Especially in those first years, which and I just want to at least, give an acknowledgement that the Synod has tried to sort of think about this at least a little bit with the Called to Serve program. Yeah. So they have gathered some data about that, and there is some concern about it, but I don't think it's not taking quite the approach that Jarryd is, but at least it's an awareness. So anyway, those are we do have high attrition once we get out.
Okay.
And that ought to be a warning
point.
sign, right?
Yeah.
That why do so many pastors leave in
Wash
the first
out.
5 years?
Yeah.
And maybe we didn't prepare them very well, and maybe we shouldn't have let them graduate, so.
That is a great point. And I will say that in MARSOC, that is 100% inverted.
Right.
The attrition rate is basically zero. You have to do something. I mean, there is a sense of earning it every day, but if it becomes clear that you need to get out, they will get you out, but it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have a great saying is you don't really rise to the occasion. You fall back to the level of training. And that's how,
Yeah.
that's how we kind of try to approach it, I think, as a mindset. So, but going back to your question, Pastor Broughton, there certainly is envy present. I mean, we're still human.
Sure.
But the guys who you would be envious of always rise to the top because they're the guys that you trust. And the mindset that you enter in to with, now I can't speak for everyone, but my perception was in the team that I was in for training was the thing that makes it easier to get through training is being surrounded by the right guys. So we had a guy, I'm not going to say his name. We had a guy who was awesome. He looked like he should be in MARSOC already. He was great. He was strong. He was fast. He was a collegiate level swimmer. Always number one. Because if you were struggling, he would take your pack. If you were struggling, he would take the radio out and he would carry that. He would carry extra ammo. He would lift you up. He would volunteer for the hard things. Mm-hmm. So you were envious that he was able to do these things and be at such a high level already. But you always ranked him number one because the next round of training is going to be hard too, and I want him there. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, the guys that got out quickly and who started scraping the bottom of the barrel were the ones who made your life harder. And the reason is coming out on the other side, I don't want to be in a team with that guy because when I'm doing this for real, he's going to be holding me back, and that's what gets you killed.
Yeah.
And that's important. So I would say, yes, there is envy. There's constantly stress. I mean, I can remember you're doing a ruck run for 12 miles with a 55-pound pack and all the rest of your stuff. And you just hate the guys in front of you because you're just like, oh, man, I just wish I was faster because then I could be done faster. I wish I was as strong as him. But that's a good place to be because you're going to trust that guy. And that's important. So,
okay. So there is that, but it was outweighed by the realization that these are the guys you want on your team because if they're not, I'm going to get killed.
That's right. If they're not, everything will be harder.
Yeah. Is there anything analogous in the ministry, Dave, that we can start thinking about in that same way? Because some of it seems like can be fostered within the ministerium already, despite the lack of training to do that.
Right. I mean, I think it does happen, of course, when we suffer together or when a guy helps you, So if you have a rogue voters assembly that's trying to take a guy down and then the pastors in the circuit show up for the voters meeting in a show of support for him and, hold the congregation accountable to say, what are your biblical reasons and what's your complaints and how can we keep this from going to the point of you vote to remove him from office, that's going to mean something to that guy. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's those sorts of things that, unfortunately, I don't know how that happens typically if there isn't some sort of hardship or suffering. We have there's all sorts of weird things. I think that, the church does fit. It's its own thing. It's not exactly like anything else. And there is a certain sense in which congregations are almost franchises and pastors are almost entrepreneurs. And there's some sense in which we're competing, with the other local churches. None of us want it to be that, but that is kind of a difference that theoretically we're all working on the same mission, right? But if there's another dive team in another company, right, you guys are competing to see who's best and who's going to get the deployment.
You're exactly right. Yeah, there is that competition. There is
a kind of competition that can create bitterness and jealousies and that are inappropriate. And there's some of that going on amongst us also. I think one of the things I really loved it's funny how I just didn't appreciate anything. I still probably don't, but I hated inspections. I didn't understand them or the point of them. Now I think I get it and I see the importance of it. But another thing I hated was peer evaluations in ROTC and in other places. And then I never liked it either, like at the seminary with peer evaluations of sermons. I never heard anybody going through that speak positively of it. But I'm starting to think that actually more of that would be really useful. To have peer evaluations already at the seminary, because of, and I liked how Jarryd talked about it in the other interview. There is this reality that often the students might know better than the instructors as to what this man's character is actually like.
Uh-huh.
And
right.
of course, the instructors. It shouldn't be that the peer evaluations are the determining factor. But it could really, that sort of thing could be really useful. And I think also, believe it or not, I think peer evaluation could actually motivate better behavior.
Uh-huh.
I had an ROTC classmate. You were talking about your stud. I had a ROTC classmate who's now a 3-star general. And so he's been in the Army 35, 36 years. And he came through the Ranger Regiment. So he commanded a battalion there. That's as high as he went there. But anyway, so he went to Ranger school during ROTC. And for the Army, that was, for us, that was, that's
a big deal.
That's a big deal. We were in awe. It was impressive. And he was impressive. And he was a total stud in every way. Straight A student. It was just a crappy little public college, but still, he was a straight A student. He was physically everything. And what I remember about him so well is how nice he was. He was just the kindest guy to us. You was better than us in kind of every way that we cared about, and yet he was always willing to help you. Now our training was not physically challenging, so it wasn't. I never had any problem physically. It wasn't hard. It was just regular ROTC stuff, and but there were tasks that were sometimes difficult, complicated, or that we didn't know everything about, and some stress. And he was just there ready to help at any point. And, there was no arrogance in him. It was such a humility. And I've thought about him a lot over the years. I've kind of followed his career when I remember. And, there's an amazing thing. True competence. I don't remember really feeling envious of him because I liked him so much.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And he was so helpful to me. And I think, maybe there's something to be learned there too, in how we talk to our brothers and how we respond to their, to bring it back to like the circuit, right? So the circuit, is the local organization of clergy, 10 to 12 or something in a geographic area.
That's our team.
Right.
Well, that's an interesting thing. Is that our team? I think of it as, I feel like a parish is about a company level organization. That's my sense of it. I feel like a company commander in terms of the amounts of kind of responsibilities and duties that I have, and the district president's like the battalion commander. And I think the circuit is kind of I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe that's...
Well, I was never in the military, so I don't know.
They're not quite our team. I think in my mind, my team, I have an associate, so I have a colleague here in the ministry, so there's 2 pastors, so he's part of the team, 100%. And the elders, the chairman...
Yes. Yeah.
That's my team.
Gotcha.
Right.
And
you are the officer. They are the enlisted.
Right.
In this analogy, right? Not perfect, but that would be the analogy.
Exactly.
Of you are setting the direction for your team, and you're part of. I would say your district, maybe more like your company commander, your battalion commander, sort of hierarchy above you. That's there to help you, give you the resources you need. There's some support staff, sure, but your team is who are you fighting the day-to-day fights with?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think that's your elders and the people in your team.
Well, and the circuit then are my peers, right?
Yeah, so, the other team commanders.
Yeah, sure. Right, the other team commanders. And so the idea would be, when we get together with them, we're going to share knowledge and experience and burdens, and perhaps, sometimes divide duties, which in our case would be you take that part of the city, I'll take this. But yeah, so I think that that's how I so I think there's multiple levels of this. The most important thing, of course, is how you actually operate within your team. But then you can't live there alone. We do actually need the synod. We do need the circuit. We need that level of accountability so we don't become cult leaders, and also so that there is an ability. So I tried to summarize Jarryd's criticism. I'm not going to, though. Why don't you tell us, Jarryd, what your kind of main criticism was?
I don't know. I kind of want to hear your summary.
I thought it, as I was listening to the interview a second time, I think it seemed to me to mostly a frustration that the Missouri Synod doesn't seem to really pass on lessons learned. So let's say we've got a great, competent parish pastor who's out there doing the work, and he's learning things, and he's making mistakes, and he's fixing them, or he's growing. But, those are they're localized. They're not shared with anybody, probably not even to his successor. And there's kind of no corporate memory. That's sort of a problem with that. And then similarly, he's not only, even if he learns things, he doesn't tell anybody. Nobody else benefits from it. But there's also no kind of ongoing evaluation or accountability assessment or really formal training, right? So if we, like the MARSOC thing, if I understand it rightly, it's a constant cycle of training and then deployment, right? Then individual training and then back to, unit training for deployment.
Right. And then constant evaluation the whole way. And
constant evaluation, and it never ends. And, that kind of sense of things. And maybe, again, it's not a perfect analogy because we are deployed all the time.
Right.
Right.
we're yeah. And I guess I would tack onto that the front loading of that, right? So the barrier for entry to this program. And then how does that program sustain and grow? How do you encourage growth inside that program? And, and I'm willing to admit that I might not have access to this information, but where's the transparency? Like, lay people need to know what to expect from their pastors.
Yes.
How are we helping them to understand that? So, I have a good example. There's a church here. I'm also a church organist, and I'm happy to help out wherever, but I used to play the organ there. But then I noticed every time I played the organ, there wasn't communion. And so I stopped because I'm like, why would I need communion. I have to go there. But I know for a fact it's the lay people demanding that every time there's a fifth Sunday, we do matins. And it's like, well, okay, fine. There's a standard here. How are we instructing our lay people to understand, hey, these are the marks of the church. This is what we do. We do communion. If you want to do matins, we can do it on a Monday or a Wednesday or whatever. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's just standards that kind of go out, and you see these collected as a collective whole. So yeah, it's the barrier for entry to this elite, prestigious, honorary or honor-filled position. But then going forward, there needs to be constant, training, evaluation. Hey, it's okay to make a mistake. Nobody's perfect. But here's how we do these things and get better over time. So
and a review of the basics.
Exactly.
I think this is another thing, right? The principles of marksmanship have to be reinforced constantly, right?
Yeah. 100%.
You can't take that for granted.
No.
And those things can grow, very rusty. And so, right, what are we doing as the larger institution to reinforce those things, to support those things? So, I like it. I like all of that stuff. I think so. Let's talk a little bit about kind of standards and lay involvement. I think a couple of things. I thought, so you said something in the last interview about raising up boys for the ministry, and thank you for that, and God be praised for it. You said that your boys will spend 99% more time with you than their pastor. That's true, and it's right. I did want to point out, though, that according to the Synod's kind of evaluation of this, the most important influence for a man entering into the ministry statistically has been that man's pastor. At least what they say, the reason they considered it and thought about it. So I'm not in any way denigrating fathers or the work that you're doing, but that to actually know a man in the office who looks you in the eye and says, you should think about this, you'd be good at this, that is hugely important.
I 100% agree. But I guess what I would argue against that is, to me, writing these articles became, the culminating point was the third one, which it was revealed that this is a Trojan horse to tell lay people, specifically men, because I am a man, to be better. If you want your pastors to be better, then raise your boys to be pastors. Yeah. And to do that, the onus is on you. To me, that's a huge red flag. If however many percentage of our seminarians say the reason I want to be a pastor is because my pastor was great, that's good. That is a great thing, because there are good pastors out there doing that. But it would be so much better, in my opinion, if they said, my father raised me to know that being a pastor is really important. And my pastor helped me, but my father is the one that emulated what the biblical standards for a pastor are. He's not a pastor, but he is in the vocation of raising up your children so that they know what the truth is. I think it would be better if they said, my father is the reason I'm a pastor, because he told me how important it was. He worked himself to the bone and made sure that I was catechized in the home to know how important this is. So I also don't want to denigrate what the pastors are doing, because I think that's wonderful and beautiful, but it belies that the laymen aren't.
Yeah, I know. I agree. If I didn't convey that, I'm sorry. No,
you're fine. You're fine. I think you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, statistically, that has not been the case. That's what I'm saying. If we ask current pastors, what interested you? I think it's probably highly unusual for lay people to have such a view of the ministry that they're actually desiring their sons to go into it. Right? I think mostly they desire their sons to go be doctors and lawyers and successful, right?
Yes.
I think that could change. And so I was commending, I think that I don't want to take away what the pastors are, we need to do it too.
Right.
But that's right. But the other thing with this, I think, in a similar kind of thing, is that I think that lay people, I'm again kind of nervous about how to say this, because I don't want to throw my brothers under the bus. At the same time, I think that lay people are generally way too nice to pastors in terms of being afraid to criticize them or evaluate them. And there are some things that, because one of the problems, this maybe is a kind of correspondence with MARSOC, is that pastors are operating largely unsupervised.
Yeah.
And, we're making up our own schedules and we're just sort of going about things. And I think that pastors should not be defensive of this. They should be ready to answer these questions when, they should be able to demonstrate, and they ought to be asked to demonstrate this. Are they actually visiting people? And what do they do on those visits? They're not just social calls, right? What sort of visits are they? Who are they visiting? What do they do while they're there? So that's not an optional part of the ministry. So also, are they actually praying for people? They actually vowed to pray for people. I think that every pastor should have a list. He ought to be able to produce it, and he ought to be able to tell you when and where he's doing it. It's probably best if he does it in a public manner, like has a daily matins or actually puts it on his calendar so it's public. But right, these are things that should actually, the elders and others in the congregation should say, hey, pastor, how do you pray? How do you pray for us? When do you pray for us? When did you last pray for me by name? What's the visitation? And then also some things about pedagogy. So we're kind of started to pick on the seminary a little bit there, but I see this in catechism pedagogy. Now, my own catechism pedagogy has drastically changed over the years, and I think I'm a lot better at it than I used to be. And one of the reasons I know that or think that is because it's so boring. And I think when I was bad at it, I didn't know I was bad at it. I thought I was good at it, but the problem was I wasn't actually doing the real work. I was just gassing off and talking about things I enjoyed talking about. And the real kind of work of catechism instruction is tedious. because you have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and make them repeat it. And if you make them work hard, it's boring for them and boring for you. And they will not do it willingly. They would rather you tell them stories. They would rather you gas off about theological profundities. But that's not really the job of catechesis. That's, I think, at a higher level, in a way, what happens at the seminary. So the guys, the professors are teaching everything, the whole counsel of God in all of its glories and profundities and deeply and accurately. But the problem is they're not holding the students accountable all the time. The students aren't being forced to repeat it back. It's just presented to them. And we need a kind of, so look, you ought to, one way to sort of deal with this is to require the parents to come to the catechism classes. But the parents should be evaluating the pastor's pedagogy. Is he doing a good job on this? Does he know what he's doing? Does he need help doing it? I don't mean, let's get rid of him if he can't do it, but let's figure it out. And then the kind of last, there's a couple other things, but the other kind of big one, I think lay people really can do and should do, is they ought to be evaluating sermons. And the problem, again, is that we just want to be nice to the guy, and we think, well, it's probably hard to preach a sermon. And if he preaches well, it also could have the possibility of upsetting the status quo. Like he could tell us to do things that we don't want to do, like maybe have communion every Sunday. So, I think in terms of that, I'm working on this. I don't have this all the way worked out yet, but I think there's a threefold evaluation for sermons that lay people ought to consider. The first level is it exegetical? That is it biblical? Does it explain a biblical text? And it doesn't have to necessarily spend the whole sermon doing that, but sermons are based on texts. They ought to open up the scriptures. They ought to explain the scriptures. Secondly, was there Christian doctrine in it? Did it actually teach? Did it make doctrinal assertions? And again, that may not be the whole sermon, but it could, And then finally, and this is sort of a loosey word, but is it applicable? Did the pastor actually apply this to our lives? Did he give us spiritual counsel and advice? Or did he leave it in a kind of abstract way? I think a lot of sermons that I listen to fail at least one of those. And often they fail. And the problem is that the standard that the lay people have been taught is, was there any false doctrine in it? And did it properly divide between law and gospel? And I agree that if those two things are failing, that's really bad. But that is such a low bar. And so what happens is the pastor gets up and says nothing. He speaks in cliches, spiritual platitudes, kind of meaningless religiosity. And the people are often just satisfied with that because he's nice when he does it. And they expect the sermons to be boring, right?
And it doesn't expect anything from them.
Right. No, it's not risky to them. They don't have to change. They're not challenged. So I think that there's, I don't know how to kind of get this out, but I love the idea of holding the clergy to a higher standard and of, getting us to all work harder and to be better at this, to share knowledge, to do these things. I also think, though, just as you were saying, right, that the lay people need to pick up their part of this. And the other thing, and this is harsh too, but the other thing, of course, especially when we're talking about seminaries, is funding. We need you to send your sons to the seminary. We need you to uphold the ministry and to love it and to believe it's worth sacrificing for. We also need funding. And if the seminaries decided to try to get a little more rigorous, we can expect there to be a blip where there's going to be a few years where we have fewer students, right?
Right.
So we got to get them through that. We've got to be committed to that. If they're going to do this, we've got to take and bear the hit together.
Well, and that's where I would boil everything you said. I agree with everything that you say. And like I said, I tried to tie all these articles together to laymen. You don't need a good pastor to be a solid Lutheran, to build your life as live and build your life as a Christian and to know this doctrine. It just becomes a lot easier when your pastor is helping you and teaching you. In The Fire and the Staff, Preuss talks about how baptism is easy. You say the words, God does the work. As long as the word and the water is there, baptism happens. What's hard is teaching. And everything you said comes down to teaching. If we can teach the lay people, if they know these things, if they have possibly resources to help them. I would love the idea of a resource put up in every single Lutheran church that says, hey, as you're listening to the sermon, think about these things and talk to your pastor about them. Pastor Broughton talked about how, and hopefully I can share this, Pastor Broughton, how you ask for this input and this critique every time you talk to your council and your elders, and create an environment where you are looking, coming in humility and saying, I want to be held accountable to you because I know that you're listening to me. What do I need to do more of? But it all comes back to educating your lay people. I love this quote by G.K. Chesterton. I'm going to read it if that's okay. And it's about this repetition that I think lay people need. Because children have abounding vitality, because they are in spirit fierce and free. Therefore, they want things repeated and unchanged. They always say, do it again. And the grown-up person does it again until he is nearly dead. For grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony. But perhaps God is strong enough to exult in monotony. It is possible that God says every morning, do it again to the sun, and every evening, do it again to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that makes all daisies alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately, but has never gotten tired of making them. It may be that he has the eternal appetite of infancy, for we have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we. That is true of lay people. You need to go back through Lutheranism 101. You need to rememorize all the scripture that you hopefully learned and memorized when you were a child, because you forget. And if you continuously refresh yourself in your faith, you can start to do these things, and you can grow this foundation in yourself. And your pastor is the one that's helping you do that. He is your teacher. And I really think we can get there, but it starts with a humility as a pastor to receive feedback, and that constant struggle every day of coming to work, working to the bone, realizing you're going to say the same thing to people and they're not going to get it, or they're going to fight you and they're going to fight the doctrine and they're going to say, that's not what I believe. I don't care what book it's in. That has to be done. And it's important, just like you do with your kids, hopefully.
So, Jarryd, I wanted to ask you about the peer review, because you brought it up too, Dave. What did those peer reviews look like in terms of being filled out? When we had peer reviews at seminary, it was like, go around the room and tell them what you think.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that you filled out and answered specific questions. Describe to me what those peer reviews were, and perhaps there's something analogous that can just begin being instituted at the circuit level or along those lines, such that we can start benefiting from those.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. So I can't remember the specific boxes that describe how you are evaluating each individual, but I think I remember the point system. So in the individual training course, you are with, I believe it shrinks the whole time, right? So let's just say 14 guys. And they have the exact same criteria after each training segment. I don't know if it was 5 or 10, whatever. We have the Marine Corps traits. Maybe it was that. But the same exact thing every single time. And you get points from 1 to 14. And you rank each individual across each trait 1 to 14. And that produces a numeric total. Most points is bad. Or vice versa, whatever, however you want to do it, right? Right. And that's extremely objective. And this goes to something Pastor Petersen talked about, which is and we all talked about the envy that can arise. If there's also a red flag situation in here where you have 13 guys saying, hey, this guy's number 1, and one guy saying he's number 14. Well, that's envy in objective form. Like, why is this guy saying this guy's at the bottom of everybody's list? He's at the top of his own list. You're also putting yourself in these rankings. It's really interesting. You have to figure out where you are, and then they weigh that against where the team thinks you are, right? And it's just a really nice numeric way to put the team in some sort of hierarchy and say, okay, based on what the instructor saw, what the peer said, this is where this person falls out. And I like it because I can't remember I think you get to see your point totals. I don't know if they tell you exactly who rated you, but I think there's value in saying, hey, this is all going to be publicly posted. So That's fine. You need to know what people say to you, because you're going to go out and some elder is going to yell at you for doing something. He's going to let you know, or not. But
yeah, I remember it just being a ranking. Like you said, I can't remember if we ranked them on different skills. It seems like it was just who's the best, who's the best in this, squad, and who's the worst. I mean, it wasn't, and we all hated it. We didn't like doing it, especially, when you actually loved all these guys.
It becomes harder at the end of training, where you're weighing these systems and saying, hey, I love all these dudes, so I'm going to rank you last in this one. I don't actually think you're last, but I'm just going to make it so everyone's even, and everybody's doing that because you like everybody you're with at the end, But right, I think what it does do. So what we did at homiletics was, I think, not very helpful. I'm not sure how it can be done different, but I think just this, and maybe we just move it away from homiletics just to general. Who do you think is going to be, who would you most want in your class to be your mother's pastor? Or your children's pastor. Or your children, or right? Or, witnessing to your unbelieving sister or whatever. So if you kind of, what happens is, just as Jarryd said, the guy, not only the instructors are going to know, it's going to be just crystal clear that he ranks the best guy last out of envy, right? But it also then, it reveals that guy's got a problem. Exactly.
I mean, and I think that, and this is, again, this is part of the sort of hard things, but I think the stress that comes from having to rank these things could also be useful, because it brings it helps you do a lot of self-reflecting. And even if, I think also I could have benefited from this. I can imagine how low I would have been ranked in my circuit, probably even, because, and then, if this evaluation's coming, it does bring a kind of accountability. I need to be, why do they think so poorly of me? And it's because of how I behave. And I need to think about this, right? It doesn't mean, just that's actually a pretty helpful thing. And I liked also your scenario idea, and that was totally new to me, that thought, that idea. We obviously had, all sorts of, pretend missions and patrols and things. But this idea of bringing in actors and putting them in a stressful situation, that was a really interesting idea. Sometimes the seminaries have used case studies, which is, right, similar. And, maybe that sort of thing, more could be made of that. And, maybe more of that could be done also even in Winkle. One of the things I like about that idea is it helps it can create kind of stress. It can help us think of things that might happen before they do. So we've had sort of some experience with them. It also kind of removes it from very specific, situations. So that you're not criticizing, in the same way, kind of a guy and what he did, we passed a resolution to send to the synod. I want the CTCR to create case studies for closed communion. What are the sort of limits and the lines for pastoral exceptions, right? Because kind of where we stand right now as a synod is, if you decide it's a pastoral exception, then no questions asked. And you could make that exception week after week. You don't have to tell the person that had the exception made, even that it was an exception. You don't report it to anybody, right? I mean, there's this kind of, this ambiguity. And I think maybe that thing we could make more use of. But yeah, the peer evaluation thing would be, it's kind of scary and it's awkward and uncomfortable, but I think it is a good tool for some real self-evaluation and consideration.
It is scary and awkward, but I think scary and awkward things build humility in you.
Yeah.
And they're the hard things. And going back to the scenarios real quick, I would just love it. Let's say we were able to get like an 8-week before you start seminary thing. It's like, we can call it a boot camp. Maybe it is like that. But imagine taking a guy who's all gung-ho about being a pastor and you throw him into a room with a screaming wife and husband, or you throw him in a room with a council that tells you, hey, we're going to abandon the liturgy. And I don't know if this pass or fails you, but it starts to put it into realistic terms for these guys. And that's kind of what doing it at MARSOC was. Like you're evaluated. I don't think anybody dropped specifically because they're like, oh, I didn't like the scenario. But I think being a pastor is like, you can almost see it with rose-colored glasses going into it. And then when reality hits you, you still have time to go pursue another vocation. But this is real world people and real world problems that happen. And having two dedicated actors that are hopefully Lutheran so they can apply a little bit deeper focus of it. I just love that idea of saying this is reality. I don't want the first time a guy has to deal with that to be when he hits his congregation and his faith is shaken, right? I know not everybody loves Hammer of God, but the first opening story of that book is a pastor going to a dying man who falters when the guy questions his faith. That's a very easy scenario to prepare guys for in a real way that I think is worth the time. The scenario stuff was great.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Kobayashi Maru from Star Trek. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, but Kirk cheats on that test, but the point is, it's meant to put it into perspective of what is really at stake here. And I remember getting glimpses periodically in seminary like, whoa, this is a big deal. But on a day-to-day basis, that was not the case for me.
Right. And I think it's helpful when the weight of it hangs over you. There's a stress involved with that, sure. But it's better for you to understand that stress going through it every single day. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, you're fine. I mean, what was your experience, Petersen?
I had the strange benefit of being there at a very bad time, during the Schmiel stuff. So there was a lot of angst on campus that was unpleasant, but I think all the people that were there at the time are thankful for it because we feel like we were kind of formed things did feel very real, very dramatic. I mean, kind of, in hindsight, exaggerated drama, but we were students. But, there was this hostility within the administration against confessional Lutheranism, a desire to shut down the seminary, and so, and a persecution, of the confessional students. So that did, I think, in a way, actually help us. Not that, there's no way to create that I know of. So I think, in a way, that was an advantage to us. Maybe every class feels like that, but yeah, I don't know. So I feel like we did have that, and we did feel like we were going to war. And it was very real and very serious for us. And I think that was largely because of the kind of stress on campus and in the whole synod. It's funny how nice things are in the synod now. It's even to hear Jarryd talk about it. The synod is actually liturgically and confessionally so much better than it was 30 years ago. It's come a long ways, and it's hugely frustrating. It's not better, and I'm not satisfied. Don't mishear me. But in a way, I wonder if that's part of our malaise. We don't have a kind of clear agenda or enemy the way we did at one point.
Yeah. We do. It's just not as apparent. It's the same enemy.
That's right.
The enemy is taking a different tact. It's complacency now.
Yeah. That's right.
I guess this raises a question for me in terms of then what is, besides what I can control in what I do in my own parish, in terms of asking for evaluations or helping to teach them how to evaluate me and to spur me on or to get me better education where it's needed or those kinds of things. How can we, without being kind of the thorn in the side or the pointing fingers or you guys are horrible, how can we do that for those around us, but also the seminaries, districts, and synod in general? So what does that duty look like, and what kind of involvement will that take?
Well, I think we could write scenarios. Maybe we need to. We got to. Okay. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud here, but we need to do something, first of all, with that kind of main criticism of Jarryd to actually pass on lessons learned. Now, I do a lot of that internally. We always do AARs, after action reviews, after every event. I've got notes and notes from years of Christmas services and Christmas Eve service and the Easter Vigil and weddings, so that I don't keep making the same mistakes. And we share, the team shares it. We go through it. It's very deliberate. And we still make mistakes, of course, but it helps. But that is very localized. And I don't think that those notes would be of much use to you, because, they're specific to our building and our traditions and ceremonies and stuff. So I think that needs to be figured out. How can we actually, where the lessons are more generic or general, even like we definitely need leadership stuff. We need to kind of recognize how to issue remonstrance, how to take compliments, how to take rebukes, how to, enter into this with the spirit of humility. So, there's all this sort of leadership stuff, and then even kinds of practical. Okay, so for example, how do you talk to people when it's time for a funeral and you've got to talk to the family of your member, not your members, but the family of your members about the hymns, right? There are things that you can do that can make it potentially better, easier. That could be shared, right? I've learned stuff about that I think would apply other places. We need some
of that kind of happens at Bugenhagen, but it's not everywhere all the time. Do you think we rely too much on the job training?
Well, I don't know how we don't rely on the job training. We do rely on it. The school of experience, but is there a sense in which the military doesn't take that for granted, and we do? Like, they'll learn that in the field. Yeah. And where the military says, well, if they learn that in the field, it's too late. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah. I think the military is training towards a standard of we want to present you with enough chaos to see if you can create order from it, so that when you are presented with something that what didn't specifically train to you, do you have something to fall back on that's your foundation?
Well, the military is not doing on-the-job training. Those guys are not learning it on the job by themselves.
Yeah, there's a support structure. There's
evaluation. They are learning on the job. I'm sure, when you get your first team, you're relying heavily upon the team sergeant. You're relying heavily upon the other subordinates and their experience, and your commander, right? And as you're learning on the job, they're helping you, they're watching you, they're correcting you, praising you, right?
Yeah.
And I think the problem is our pastors are learning on the job, but they're learning all by themselves.
Well, and I think that there's a lesson here, and I think we're talking about it, right? If your pastor comes in and is teaching and preaching the gospel and is helping to sort of create that team of people that trust him, he's humble enough to receive direction and come back, well, then you've created your team sergeant who feels comfortable giving you that feedback and is educated, right? And then if you're demanding that of your district support as well, you can replicate those support structures that exist in the military, I think, to the benefit of the pastor, I would hope.
Yeah. So here's another thing I was thinking about, some of these distinctions between the two things. It is different in that when you come to a congregation fresh out of seminary, it is not the case that you're going to get a first sergeant or a platoon sergeant or a team sergeant that is deeply experienced and also well educated. You're often going to be worlds above them, not just in education, but actually in life experience of the faith, that is, in living out a pious life. Because the seminary, at least, even if you didn't grow up in a super pious home, the seminary itself is going to be 4 very intense years, not only, and the seminaries boast about this, and they rightly boast about this, it's not only an academic education, it is it is actually a devotional life and a prayer life. And so, and I'm not, again, I'm not denigrating the lay people, but I think in general,
away. That's totally fine.
I mean, there are lay people that are exceptional in this, and there are congregations that are exceptional in this. I mean, for sure, but it's often the case that a guy goes out to some congregation that has never really been catechized well, or at least hasn't been for 75 years or more, and whose people are not, there aren't very many of them, if any, who are reading the Bible every day, who can recite the catechism, who take these things very seriously. And so I was trying to, again, just imagine about this. In some ways, I feel like this is what do you guys, when you go and train foreign armies, what do you call that? Like insurgents or whatever. Maybe that's more of a Army Green Beret mission.
Stuff like that, yeah.
So, I mean, there's a sense in which the pastor does show up in some ways as actually the subject matter expert with maybe more experience than anyone on his team. And so that is kind of, I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
But then, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please finish your thought.
No, I'd love to hear what would be your advice for a guy in that kind of situation?
Well, I think we're sort of answering the question that Pastor Broughton said, which is, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for pastors that want that experience, maybe you didn't get it, but you can start building that for the next guy that comes in and for yourself. And so I think there's a top-down and a bottom-up approach to this, which is the bottom-up is what can you affect at the team? I'm sure this happens even in special operations, but you get to a team that's lazy, compliant, whatever, or complacent rather, and you have to instill some discipline. And that is a hard thing to do because these guys have experience that you just don't have. And that they can say like, well, I don't need to wear my flak jacket because it's easier to shoot without it. And like, yeah, well, you're going to wear it anyway because I don't want you to get shot because I kind of need you, little silly things like that. But you can start building for the next pastor to come in and have that team. And that's a hard thing, but that's where the bottom up approach is. How do I fortify my team? How do I encourage my peers that are around me and work within my district for these things? That's the bottom up. And then from the top down, I think what I would like to see, I can't speak for every layperson, is more top down sort of guidelines. Hey, this is who we are looking for in our future pastors. This is what you should be looking for in your pastor. This is the synod's standards for our pastors today and our pastors of tomorrow. And we're going to start enforcing these things. And that's going to come with attrition and anger and gnashing of teeth, I'm sure. But it has to come from both levels, because once they meet in the middle, things start to get really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come to, imagine if you went into it knowing I'm going to fall in on a confessional church with a board of elders and council and lay people that know our theology, and I can move beyond fighting over the definition of this term or that term because we have a good baseline. I'll still do initial catechism for adults, and I'll still encourage people who have been at the church for 50 years to come, but we're starting at a ground, and that is where the true fruits of the Spirit can be reaped, because the congregation as a one is moving forward. That would be my suggestion, at least.
Good answer.
So it's not just top down or bottom up. Both things need to happen.
That's
the question is, then what is our duty as congregations that are members of Synod and pastors who are members of Synod to evaluate those who supervise us, and a call for them either to institute this kind of standard and hold them to it. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, well, the example I would go after is, Martin Luther just pounded 95 theses. But I think it's okay. The humility kind of goes both ways. If a pastor is humble enough to ask his congregation for assistance in things, if your district bureaucracy, not in a bad way, just, the district bureaucracy that's in place in the synod is unwilling to accept criticism or accept feedback, that is a bad sign. And at that point, you have to work kind of down and in because you're sheltering your congregation from that. But I would hope that that humility extends all the way up to President Harrison to say, hey, these things are going wrong, and we want some guidance from you. We don't want to abolish the synod. We want it to become better, to become more helpful and more involved, because we're trying to live our lives this way. We want our pastors to be this way. There has to, and I think just speaking up and having a voice, and if you are right, the Holy Spirit will be with you.
Yeah.
So,
Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, this is all good. In terms of kind of, here's the 3-point plan to move forward. I don't have that. I do think, it's got to start for each of us at a very personal level.
Yeah.
And that's got to be in the first place that I want to get better, that I'm evaluating seriously and prayerfully what I'm doing and how well I'm doing it. And I want to learn.
Yeah. For pastors and lay people, this is everybody. Yeah.
And then I think, kind of the second thing is you got to show up. You've got to go to Winkle. You've got to go to the district convention. You've got to go to these things. And for lay people, as you brought up in your last, there are actually like these circuit forums and other possibilities, and we need to participate. We can't just gripe about things to one another.
That's right. You have to be on council. You have to serve as an elder. You have to help your church.
That's right. And you have to suffer imperfect. So I'm coming around. I like this training of insurgents idea. I wonder if that isn't the best analogy now. Because
it's a great analogy too, because think about how easy it would be if you went there and they were already trained.
Right.
It gets a lot easier.
But what about if you go there and there's corruption in their army, and they haven't maintained their equipment, and there's all these things, and you can't just go there and insult them, I would assume.
That's right.
I don't know what you do.
You may want to.
Right. But
you
right.
can't, because at the end of the day, they're going to have a gun, and you don't, you got to be able to trust them as you go out. So.
And you're also trying to make them kind of as good as they can be without necessarily the expectation they're going to be as good as you are.
That's right. And there's a love and respect that goes that way. They can deny it, and you can shake the dust off your boots. That's sometimes how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the difficulty comes in. And the Fire and the Staff talks about this. The difficulty is in the teaching. It's not in what God is doing. God will do it. It's in how do you teach these people? Yeah.
So patience and learning their language, right? You guys had to learn their language.
Man,
yeah. So I think maybe that's food for thought anyway for me to sort of think about how we talk about this, and in a way that I liked what you said. They're respectful, right? We're not antagonistic to the people we've been sent to train, even if we're frustrated with their level with what we've inherited.
Yeah. And this goes back to the standards too, is what we're talking about is having the courage to do these things in a way that is helpful. Because we need men of faith who are courageous enough to stand up for it, especially in our pastoral roles. Obviously, lay people need to be courageous in their faith too. Of course, that makes it so much easier, but they're going to follow their pastor. For better or for worse. And what I'm saying is you can screen for courage. You can identify that. You can find men who won't quit, who are strong in their faith. I mean, I think about the reason I love this analogy too is the Bible is filled with men. Like, let's take Gideon, for example. If you've ever been in combat or served with men where that is coming out, going up with 300 dudes on the promise of the omnipotent God against an army of thousands, that takes a lot of courage. And Gideon was not the most courageous guy, but he had enough courage to say yes to what God wanted him to do. And God saw an amazing victory, like unprecedented. I think we can find men like that. I think fathers can raise men like that. I think pastors can teach their congregations to be like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think also, we can also cultivate that and grow that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very well said, that the office of the ministry. So I often say that the word of God is confrontational, and it does require a great deal of moral courage to state these things, to assert these things, and to insist upon them. But if we don't have that, right?
Yeah. And it's also easy to have courage in front of people that hate you. It's really hard to have courage in front of people that love you, but just want to do the wrong thing.
Oh, that's a really
great point.
That's an interesting idea. I've never thought about that. It's easy to have courage if they hate you. Is that really courage, though? Would Aristotle agree with that? That's courage? Is that just returning hatred for hatred?
Well,
I don't know. I'm just asking.
Know. Yeah, it's probably a longer question. C.S. Lewis says that courage is the summation of your virtues at the breaking point.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier when their virtues are so twisted that the evil is obvious.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's easy to be. Yeah. I always use the Marines as an example for this. I always say it's easy. Yeah. I always say it's easy to be a Marine for 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the long haul to do, because what they're doing is not that hard typically, right?
Right.
It's to keep on doing it, through the whole night. That's the hard part. Anybody, I can walk with a 50 pound bat, right? I can carry all that stuff for about 100 feet, right? So,
yeah, it's not complicated, but it's not easy.
Right.
That's a better way. Right. Yeah, the recipe is very simple.
Yeah,
but doing it
and doing it over and over again consistently, and when it becomes tedious, and when
So, what did they teach you, Jarryd, with regard to previous leaders or predecessors who may have been lacking, or you perceive that they were lacking either in discipline or in certain things? How did they teach you to I don't want to say combat, but to reinstitute without undermining the love or respect or for the office, that leader in general, like him specifically, or the position in general?
That's where the scenarios and case studies come in. You look at these decisions, and they're genericized, right? We're not going to denigrate it because they'll take lessons learned from guys that are still serving. But what I really loved about MARSOC is when I showed up, my first commanding officer had lost his legs, and so he was still serving. And there's this sort of awe that you have of somebody like that, right? There's just an aura of grit and determination that you want to respect. And yet he still had the humility when you're just like, oh, this guy's amazing. He would come to you and say, like, look, I'm not amazing. I made mistakes. Like, maybe they led to this or maybe they didn't, but I'm just trying to get better every single time. So you have these case studies and these scenarios that you can after action and talk about and have conversations that help you grow. But then you also have leaders that are willing to admit their mistakes and say, hey, I made the same mistake. Here's what I did to get better. Or even better, before you go out and do this, here's the mistakes I made. Don't make them. So it kind of goes both ways, I just loved it that, my commanding officer would tell me, this is the stupid thing I did, and I wish I did. Yeah.
So this is for both of you, kind of to wrap things up. If you were king, what would be the 3 things that you'd want someone to begin doing right away, whether it's pastor, lay leader, or just a layman in general? Jarryd, why don't you go first?
Okay. Yes. So I would say to the lay people, pray, open your Bibles, do matins at home, and catechize your children. And if you don't have children, offer to help catechize other people's children. Just start to live like a Christian, and that will give you a foundation in your life that you can begin to grow. I would say for pastors, just teach. Even the people you trust the most need to be taught. For district presidents, I would say support your fellow pastors. Go and listen to their sermons, critique them, give them that feedback. and then talk to other district presidents about what you're doing and just get better. And from the synod, I would just ask, and I'll go to the seminaries too, but start to come together and say, this is the standard we want. We don't want these things. We don't want to abandon our liturgy. We do want theologically sound lay people and pastors. We do want these things. And here are our biblical standards that you should be looking for. And for the seminaries, I would say, don't be afraid to fail people. And by fail, I don't mean fail and humiliate. I mean redirect to vocations that are still going to glorify God and enforce them. Don't be afraid to graduate 2 guys. That's fine. We don't need more guys that are going to abandon the faith or lead people astray. We need guys with the courage that are going to come in and do the hard work day in and day out, not lose their faith, and go forth with a small band of men with torches against the hordes of the enemy.
Mm-hmm. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I think, first of all, we need the humility to recognize that we can do better individually, synodically, seminaries, and to not need to protect the sort of reputations or what we've done in the past. Mm-hmm. So I think just kind of, and then to be unashamed of sort of past failures in the sense that, I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Not that we're happy about them, but we have made them, to the kind of humility and honesty there that would actually want to make things better instead of trying to defend ourselves. I think the next thing, sort of, this is right out of MARSOC, but maybe we need to tell people, don't quit. There's too much quitting going on, and not enough of kind of willingness to endure this. So whether that is, you quit going to Winkle because you're mad at those guys because they all stink, or you quit trying because your congregation won't listen, or you quit going to church because the pastor's not good enough, right? Yeah. So we can't quit these things. We have confidence in God's word and trust in it, and we believe he's good. And then I think maybe the last thing, maybe this is just all just very personal things I need, but kindness. Let your gentleness be known to all men. That if we're going to move forward with higher standards, we need to do it with compassion, gentleness, and I don't mean to soften the standards for that. I think that's been the mistake. Yeah. Yes. These are the mistakes we've made in the past, that I think we were more worried about being nice and sparing people's feelings than, at a level that we lowered our standards. So I don't want to do that, but I do think we need to recognize that we have to move forward. I want to move forward. That's going to require patience and kindness. So I don't know if that was 3 or 4 or
no,
2
you
and a
got
half.
3. Yeah. I think if I were to just add anything, you mentioned humility, but I also think that there's just kind of a lack of curiosity of being better. That we can get kind of stuck in ruts in such a way that, that we're carrying out our duties as though it were a crock pot. And we get mad at the things that happen that challenge us, instead of seeing that those things that are actually challenging us, God is putting there to call us out of that complacency and begin to love and look forward to difficulty, not in a masochistic way, but recognizing that this is the crucible through which God is actually going to make us stronger and better. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
Yeah, it's all good.
All right. Well, any final thoughts from either of you? I know Dave will have none, but...
No, I appreciated the conversation and just the willingness to talk more. I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, I found this to be very beneficial, and just in terms of ironing some of the things out that we began to talk about and the things that you raised in your articles to, begin to kind of like actually push these forward to things that we can actually begin to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thank you for writing those articles and for doing these podcasts. And I hope we can make use of your expertise and experience, and it doesn't get passed over. So thanks for speaking up, and please keep doing it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think hopefully we can continue the conversation. Always happy to help or think about these things and what we can do to be better. Because at the end of the day, I'm looking out for my kids. I want them to have good pastors out there and to be good lay people. So,
yeah. Well, I think in the end, one of the big takeaways, I think, is just from the position that you take in terms of this is more important and there's more at stake. And I think we can begin to believe that it's not. And I think you're right. It is more important and there is more at stake. And we need to begin to act like that there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, that was part of what I struggled with, because I wanted to argue with you on that. I mean, my gut reaction in the first interview was, I was like, come on, there's if a Marine, doesn't take care of his weapon, there's lives at stake. But, if I forget to check and make sure there's enough bread on the altar, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And the problem was, as I tried to argue with you, I was unable to.
Well, I mean, and this is part of that complacency. We can get into those ruts instead of...
The work we do can feel mundane, and in some sense it is, and it can feel insignificant. And, we trust in God to take care of it, to be sure, but we take our duties seriously, and we should. These are much is at stake.
Yeah.
Just say that.
Yeah. Everything is at stake.
Yeah.
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 So
it would do us
reminder.
well to be a bit more scrupulous.
That's right. And I just read on the priesthood. Every lay person, every pastor out there, he really puts it into perspective of how important this is.
Yeah.
And it was very helpful for me, very illuminating.
Yeah. I love that book too. It was hilarious. That was the Chesterton quote you picked. That's one of our favorites.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are great resources. All the stuff you named.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time and for your insight, and hopefully the whole Missouri Synod can benefit from this, and the gospel can go forward and expand what each of us are doing in our own spheres.
Absolutely. We'll continue to pray for that.
Thank you.